The Henderson consultation had been scheduled for 3 hours, but Martha Henderson was the kind of client who'd already made up her mind before I walked through her front door. She wanted the premium security package for her colonial-style home in Riverside Heights. Motion sensors, glass break detectors, the works. No haggling, no questions about cost, just a firm handshake and a request to start installation next week. My neighbor's house was broken into last month, she explained while signing the contract. They got in through a basement window nobody ever thought to secure. I'm not taking any chances. Smart woman. After 15 years running secure home systems, I'd seen too many families learn about security the hard way. Prevention was always cheaper than recovery. The meeting wrapped up by 2:15 p.m., which meant I was driving home on a Wednesday afternoon instead of my usual 5 o'clock arrival. I used the extra time to plan tomorrow's presentation for Westfield Shopping Center, our biggest potential commercial client to date. 50 retail stores, each needing individual security assessments and coordinated monitoring. If we landed that contract, it would be worth more than our entire residential division. I turned onto Maple Street, mentally rehearsing my pitch about integrated security solutions, when I spotted the familiar white van in my driveway. Precision Locks, Gary Hoffman, was painted in neat blue letters across the side panel, with his phone number and state license displayed below. My stomach dropped. Gary wasn't supposed to be here. More importantly, Melissa wasn't supposed to be home. My wife worked at Dr. Morrison's dental practice until 5 every weekday. Had for the past 8 years, ever since Emma started kindergarten, and we needed the second income to cover the mortgage on our 4-bedroom house. I pulled to the curb 2 houses down, parking behind Mrs. Patterson's silver Camry. Through my windshield, I could see Gary's van clearly. The rear doors were closed, no equipment visible, not the setup of someone actively working on a security system. My phone buzzed with a text message from Melissa. Running late at work today. Emergency root canal for Mrs. Garcia. Probably won't be home until 7. Can you handle dinner for the kids? Sent 14 minutes ago, according to the timestamp. I stared at the message, then at Gary's van, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Gary had installed our home security system 6 months ago. A comprehensive setup with door sensors, window contacts, and interior motion detectors. We'd been pleased with his work and had referred him to several secure home clients since then. He was reliable, professional, and according to Melissa, actually listens when you explain what you need, unlike most contractors. But there was no reason for him to be here now, especially not when Melissa was supposedly stuck at work with a dental emergency. I checked my watch. 2:30 p.m. Emma and Josh wouldn't be home from school for another hour and 15 minutes. Emma had drama club practice on Wednesdays, which meant she'd be even later. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, running through possible explanations. System malfunction that Melissa had called in before leaving for work. Routine maintenance she'd forgotten to mention. A misunderstanding about scheduling. None of them felt right. I walked around to the side of our house, staying low beneath the kitchen window. The angle was wrong to see much of anything, but I could make out movement through the gap in our bedroom curtains. The curtains Melissa had insisted on replacing just last month because the old ones didn't provide enough privacy. I crept closer to the window that faced the backyard, the one Melissa always forgot to fully close after her morning routine. She'd open it to let fresh air in while she got dressed, then leave it cracked 6 inches when she rushed off to work. Through that 6-inch gap, I could see everything. Gary's locksmith toolbox sat on our bedroom floor, unopened. His metal tool case, the one he carried to every job, wasn't even unlatched. His work shirt, the navy blue polo with precision locks embroidered on the chest, was draped over our dresser. The same dresser where Melissa kept her jewelry and where I'd hidden her anniversary gift just last week. Gary stood near our bed in just his white undershirt and work pants, talking to someone I couldn't see from this angle. His posture was relaxed, comfortable, like he belonged there. Then, Melissa stepped into view. She was wearing the blue dress I'd complimented that morning over coffee, the one that brought out her eyes, I'd told her, while she stood at the kitchen counter packing her lunch. Now the dress was unbuttoned to the waist, hanging open like a robe. She was laughing at something Gary had said, her hand resting on his chest in a gesture so intimate, so familiar that my knees nearly buckled. This wasn't the awkward fumbling of a new affair. This was the comfortable intimacy of people who'd been together many times before. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking as I switched to video mode. The lawyer in me, the part that had learned to document everything during 15 years of business contracts and insurance claims, forced me to record what I was seeing. I held the phone steady, capturing multiple angles through the window gap. Gary's hands on my wife's waist. Melissa reaching up to touch his face with the tenderness she used to reserve for me. The way they moved together, anticipating each other's movements like dancers who'd rehearsed this routine countless times. When Gary started unbuttoning his pants, I stopped recording and backed away from the window. I'd seen enough. I had enough. But as I walked back to my car, my analytical mind was already working. This wasn't just about the affair. Gary had access to our client database. He had administrative credentials I'd given him 6 months ago during an emergency weekend service call. Credentials I'd never bothered to revoke because he was trustworthy and professional. If he was using that access to coordinate these meetings, to check client schedules and know when houses would be empty, then this was bigger than adultery. This was a systematic breach of client confidentiality, potentially criminal in scope. The drive to my office took 15 minutes through suburban traffic, but it felt like hours. I kept replaying what I'd seen, cross-referencing it with recent memories that suddenly took on new significance. Melissa's new attention to her appearance, the gym membership she'd started 6 months ago, the subtle changes to her makeup routine, the way she'd begun putting her phone face down during dinner. The timing wasn't coincidental. My office building was nearly empty at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. Most of my staff worked standard business hours, and our installation crews were out on jobs. I unlocked the server room and pulled up our access logs, my fingers flying across the keyboard with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd built this system from scratch. The database showed every login, every file accessed, every search performed. I filtered for Gary's credentials and watched 6 months of activity scroll across my screen. What I found made my blood run cold. Gary's IP address had accessed our system 47 times in the past 6 months, always outside normal business hours. Weekend logins, evening sessions, early morning access before most people were awake. I cross-referenced those dates with Melissa's recent sick days from the dental practice. Sick days I'd never questioned because who lies about being sick? I pulled up her employment records from Dr. Morrison's office, dates I remembered because I'd offered to take care of her each time. 14 matches. 14 times Gary had logged into our system on days when Melissa had called in sick to work. But it got worse as I dug deeper into the files he'd accessed. Gary hadn't been randomly browsing our database. He'd been targeting specific clients, downloading their vacation schedules from our service calendar. Families who'd booked extended trips through our travel monitoring service. 2 weeks in Europe, 10 days in Hawaii, 3 weeks visiting relatives across the country. He'd accessed their security system layouts, their emergency contact information, their detailed home specifications. Information that could be used to bypass their security systems or, more likely, to know exactly when their houses would be empty. I screenshot everything, backing it up to 3 separate cloud accounts, my personal Google Drive, our company server, and a secure backup service I used for sensitive business documents. Then I started digging even deeper into the pattern. The sophistication was chilling. Gary would check a client's vacation schedule, then download their security specifications the same day Melissa called in sick. He'd focus on families with teenagers or young adults, households where friends might come and go regularly, providing natural cover for any unusual activity in the neighborhood. 3 families had reported break-ins during their vacations in the past 6 months. All 3 were clients whose information Gary had accessed. None of the break-ins had triggered their security systems, suggesting someone with intimate knowledge of how to bypass them. My phone rang, startling me out of my analysis. Melissa's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, honey, how did the Henderson meeting go?" I stared at my computer screen, watching Gary's digital footprints tell the story of months of systematic betrayal. "Fine." They went with the premium package. "That's wonderful. You've been working so hard to land more residential clients." Her voice carried the same warmth it always had. The same genuine enthusiasm for my success that had made me fall in love with her 12 years ago. I'm still stuck here at the office. This root canal is taking forever, and Dr. Morrison wants me to stay late to help with the cleanup. The lie came so easily to her. I wondered how many times she'd practiced variations of this story, how many fictional dental emergencies she'd created to cover her tracks. That's fine. No problem. I'll grab something for dinner and work late myself. Got that big Westfield presentation tomorrow. Oh, right, the shopping center contract. You'll do great, honey. You always do. Thanks. Love you. Love you too. I hung up and immediately called David Roth, my attorney. David had handled Secure Homes contracts for years, but more importantly, he'd guided me through every major business decision since I'd started the company. He was also the sharpest legal mind I knew, someone who could see 3 moves ahead in any strategic situation. David, I need to see you immediately. I have a contractor who's been accessing confidential client data for personal use, and it's about to become a major liability issue for my company. How major are we talking, Roger? Potentially criminal, and it could expose us to lawsuits from hundreds of clients. How immediate is immediately? I'm driving to your office right now. David's office occupied the entire 15th floor of the Commerce Building downtown, with windows overlooking the river and the courthouse beyond. He poured coffee from an expensive machine while I laid out the evidence, the access logs, the vacation schedule downloads, the pattern of unauthorized system use that coincided with actual break-ins. I kept the personal details to myself for now. This was about protecting my business and my clients. This is serious, Roger. If he's been using client information for criminal activity, your company could face significant liability. Insurance fraud, negligent data protection, breach of fiduciary duty. What's our immediate exposure? David leaned back in his leather chair, studying the printouts I'd brought. Worst case? Every affected client could sue for damages. Your business insurance might not cover criminal acts by contractors. The state could investigate your security practices. What's our play? We need to get ahead of this. Document everything, revoke his access immediately, and notify clients about the potential security breach. But we have to be extremely careful about how we word the notification. We can't make accusations we can't prove in court. What about criminal charges? That's a separate track. You'll need to file a complaint with police for unauthorized computer access and potential identity theft. But first, let's protect your business and your clients. How many people could be affected? I did the math in my head, factoring in active accounts and the time period of Gary's access. 847 active accounts. Gary had full administrative access to all of them. David whistled low. We need to move fast. Can you be back here tomorrow morning at 8? I'll have a client notification drafted by then, and we'll need to coordinate with several locksmiths to handle the rekey requests that are going to flood in. Already thinking about that. I'll need to line up contractors immediately. Good. Also, we should consider hiring a forensic IT specialist to fully document the breach. The criminal case will require expert testimony about the scope of unauthorized access. I spent the rest of the afternoon building an airtight case. I pulled every log entry, every file access, every digital breadcrumb Gary had left behind. The pattern was overwhelming: systematic data theft spanning 6 months, targeting vulnerable clients, coordinated with my wife's fraudulent absences from work. But I also used our home security system to review recent activity, curious about the pattern I was beginning to see in my personal life. Our driveway camera showed Gary's van arriving 14 times when I was away on scheduled jobs. The timestamps were precise, recorded automatically by our security system. Every visit coincided with my predictable absences: the weekly maintenance calls I conducted personally, the monthly commercial inspections, the quarterly security audits that took me out of town. Gary had used our own client management system to track my schedule, to know exactly when I'd be away and for how long. Every single time, Melissa's car had arrived approximately 30 minutes after Gary's van. Every visit lasted between 2 and 3 hours, long enough for what they were doing, but not so long as to risk unexpected interruptions. They'd been methodical, careful, but not quite careful enough to avoid leaving digital evidence. I drove home at my usual time, acting like nothing had changed. Melissa was already there, bustling around the kitchen in her dental scrubs, preparing dinner for Emma and Josh. She looked radiant, energized in a way I hadn't seen in months. "How was the emergency root canal?" I asked, kissing her cheek like I did every evening. "Exhausting. Poor Mrs. Garcia was in so much pain. We had to do a complete extraction, and then she had complications with the anesthetic." The details flowed smoothly, believable because she'd had practice creating these fictional scenarios. "Dr. Morrison said he's never seen a more complex case." Another lie, delivered with the same casual ease as asking about my day or discussing weekend plans. Emma and Josh bounded into the kitchen, full of stories about school drama, homework complaints, and excitement about upcoming events. Emma was rehearsing for the spring musical. Josh was working on a science project about home security systems. "Dad, can you help me with my project this weekend?" Josh asked, dumping his backpack on the counter. "It's about how security systems work and why most people don't really understand how vulnerable their houses are." "Of course, buddy. What's your hypothesis?" "That people think security systems make them safe, but there are always ways around them if you know what you're doing." If only he knew how right he was, or how relevant his project had become to our own situation. "That's a smart approach, Josh. We'll work on it together." Melissa smiled at our interaction, the picture of a loving mother and wife. "You two and your security talk. Sometimes I think you're trying to scare us with all these stories about break-ins and system failures." "Just want to keep everyone safe," I replied, watching her face for any sign that she understood the irony. The next morning, I arrived at David's office 15 minutes early, carrying a comprehensive file of evidence and a timeline of events that would impress any prosecutor. David had the client notification printed and ready for review. Security advisory. Immediate action required. Dear valued Secure Home Systems. Client, during a routine security audit of our client management system, our IT department detected irregular access patterns that may have compromised the confidentiality of your account information. While we have no evidence of criminal activity, we are taking immediate precautionary measures to ensure your continued security and peace of mind. The irregularities involve unauthorized access to client records by a contractor who provided locksmith services through our referral program. This individual has been immediately terminated from our vendor network, and we have revoked all system access privileges. Effective immediately, we recommend all clients consider the following security measures. Rekey all exterior locks that may have been serviced by this contractor. Update any security codes or access passwords. Review recent security system activity for unusual patterns. Consider upgrading to our latest encrypted monitoring technology. Secure Home Systems is partnering with certified bonded locksmiths to facilitate emergency rekey services at a group discount rate of $200 per residence. We will coordinate all scheduling and front the costs, seeking reimbursement through our professional liability insurance. We sincerely apologize for this breach of trust and appreciate your patience as we work to resolve this matter. Your security is our highest priority, and we are taking every possible step to ensure this situation never happens again. Please contact our office immediately to schedule your security update. Our emergency response team will be available 24/7 through the weekend to address your concerns. Sincerely, Roger Novak, President Secure Home Systems. It's perfect, I told David after reading through the draft twice. Factual, legally sound, and it puts the focus on protecting clients rather than assigning blame to Gary. When do you want to send it? Tomorrow morning, first thing. That gives me today to line up replacement locksmiths and prepare for the response. We're going to get flooded with calls. What about the criminal complaint? I'll file that Monday, after the client notification goes out and I have a clearer picture of the scope. I want to be able to tell the police exactly how many families were potentially affected. I spent Thursday morning on the phone with every reputable locksmith in the Tri-County area. The conversations were delicate. I needed to explain the urgency without revealing too many details about Gary's situation. I'm looking for emergency rekey services for several hundred homes, I explained to Marcus Thompson, owner of Thompson Security Services. We had a security breach involving a contractor, and we need to move fast to protect our clients. Several hundred? That's a massive job, Roger. What kind of timeline are we talking about? Starting Friday, continuing through the weekend and into next week. I need 3 crews minimum, working extended hours. What's the pay rate? 200 per house, cash on completion. Secure Home will front all costs and handle client coordination. By noon, I had agreements with 3 companies to handle the emergency rekey jobs. Marcus Thompson committed to 2 crews, Central Valley Locks promised 3 crews, and Riverside Security agreed to provide backup support. Altogether, we could handle up to 50 properties per day. I also spent the afternoon filing preliminary complaints with the state licensing board and Gary's professional liability insurance carrier. Each complaint required detailed documentation, precise timelines, and specific allegations supported by evidence. The police report would come next week, after the client notification created a public record of the breach, and I could demonstrate concrete damages to Gary's victims. Thursday afternoon, I systematically changed every administrative password in our system and revoked Gary's access credentials. 15 years in business had taught me the importance of documentation, so I recorded every action with timestamps and screenshots. I also contacted our cybersecurity consultant, Elena Rodriguez, to conduct a full forensic audit of our systems. We need to know exactly what he accessed, when he accessed it, and whether he downloaded any files to external storage, I explained during our phone consultation. How long did he have access? 6 months with full administrative privileges. That's enough time to download your entire database multiple times. We'll need to do a complete forensic image of your servers and trace every action he took. That evening, I played the perfect husband and father. I helped Josh research home security vulnerabilities for his science project, reviewed Emma's college prep timeline, and made dinner reservations for Melissa's birthday next week at the Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary. Melissa seemed relaxed, happier than I'd seen her in months. She talked animatedly about changes at the dental practice, her plans for redecorating our bedroom, her ideas for a family vacation that summer. Dr. Morrison is thinking about expanding the practice, she said over dinner. He might need another hygienist if the patient load keeps growing. That's good news for job security. It really is, and the new insurance plans are covering more preventive care so people are taking better care of their teeth. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Things are really looking up for us, Roger. If only she knew how much her situation was about to change. Friday morning at 8 a.m. sharp, I hit send on the client notification email. The message went out to 847 active accounts, each one a family that trusted Secure Home to protect their most valuable possessions. By 8:15, my phone was ringing. Secure Home Systems, this is Roger. What the hell is this about a security breach? I want answers, and I want them now. The voice belonged to Janet Patterson, owner of Patterson's Fine Jewelry. Her store had been using our commercial services for 5 years. Mrs. Patterson, I understand your concern. We discovered that a contractor had been accessing client information without authorization. As a precaution, we're recommending security updates for all affected accounts. Without authorization? You mean someone stole our customer information? We're still investigating the full scope, but we want to ensure your security isn't compromised while we sort everything out. This could ruin my business. If my customers think their information was stolen, Mrs. Patterson, we're handling this proactively. We'll coordinate your rekey at no cost to you, and we're implementing additional security measures for all commercial accounts. The calls continued for hours. Martha Henderson called to express concern, but appreciation for our transparency. The Westfield Shopping Center management team scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday morning. 3 families threatened immediate legal action if their homes were compromised. But the most interesting call came at 10:30 a.m. Roger, it's Gary. What the heck is going on? My phone hasn't stopped ringing since 8 this morning. I kept my voice level, professional, giving no hint that I knew about his activities beyond the computer access. Gary, we discovered some irregularities in our system access logs during a routine security audit. Nothing personal, just covering our bases with clients. Irregularities? What kind of irregularities? Unauthorized access outside business hours. Downloads of confidential client information. Our insurance company requires us to notify all potentially affected parties. There was a long pause. I could almost hear Gary's mind racing, trying to figure out how much I knew and what his exposure might be. Roger, I can explain the after-hours access. Sometimes I needed to check installation specs for weekend emergency calls. I'm sure you can explain it, Gary. But right now, I need to focus on protecting my clients and my business. The insurance company will probably want to talk to you about your access patterns. Insurance company? Professional liability coverage. They're treating this as a potential data breach claim. You understand? Yeah, I understand. He hung up, and I smiled for the first time in 3 days. By Friday afternoon, Gary's world was beginning to unravel in ways he hadn't anticipated. His liability insurance company, Contractors Mutual, had issued an investigation notice after receiving my complaint. They were restricting his ability to take on new clients pending their review of potential claims. The insurance investigator, Michael Bennett, called Gary Friday afternoon with a list of questions that must have made Gary's blood run cold. Mr. Hoffman, we've received a complaint alleging unauthorized access to confidential client data. We need a complete list of all customers you've serviced through secure home systems, along with documentation of what information you accessed and when. Gary couldn't provide that documentation without admitting he'd systematically violated client confidentiality. I'll need to review my records, Gary told the investigator. How long will that take? I'm not sure. Maybe a week? Mr. Hoffman, Secure Home is claiming hundreds of clients may be affected. If you can't provide documentation within 48 hours, we'll have to assume the worst-case scenario for coverage purposes. Saturday morning brought the first wave of client panic. Over 200 Secure Home customers had called our emergency line demanding immediate lock changes. Gary's small operation, 3 technicians including himself, couldn't handle that volume under normal circumstances, let alone while under investigation. Ironically, most of the panicked clients ended up hiring the same locksmiths I'd partnered with for the group discount rate. Gary was essentially watching his customer base get redistributed to his competitors, while he remained frozen by the insurance investigation. Marcus Thompson called me Saturday afternoon with an update. Roger, we've completed 38 rekeys since yesterday. Every single house we've been to, the homeowner mentions that Gary Hoffman installed their original locks. They're all nervous about what he might have done with copies of their keys. Any evidence of break-ins or attempted entries? 3 families reported suspicious activity during recent vacations. Nothing taken, but signs that someone had been in their houses. All 3 had vacation information in your system. By Saturday evening, Channel 9 News had picked up the story after a tip from one of the affected homeowners. Security breach affects hundreds of local families, led the 6 o'clock broadcast, complete with interviews from concerned residents and security experts discussing the dangers of contractor access to confidential information. The reporter, Jessica Martinez, had done her homework. She'd contacted the state licensing board, interviewed cybersecurity experts, and even gotten a comment from Detective Maria Santos about the potential for criminal charges. When contractors have access to personal information like vacation schedules and security layouts, Detective Santos explained to the camera, it creates opportunities for criminal activity that homeowners never consider. Gary's business phone number was displayed on screen as part of the story, identified as the contractor at the center of the investigation. By Sunday morning, Gary's phone was ringing constantly with angry clients, concerned neighbors, and reporters seeking comments. Monday brought the professional licensing consequences Gary hadn't anticipated. The state licensing board, responding to my formal complaint and the media coverage, issued an emergency suspension notice. Gary was prohibited from performing locksmith services pending a formal hearing scheduled for the following week. The suspension notice, delivered by certified mail and email, required Gary to notify all current clients immediately and arrange for other licensed locksmiths to complete any ongoing work. But Monday also brought consequences for Melissa that she hadn't seen coming. I'd spent the weekend preparing a detailed documentation package, not just the computer access logs, but a comprehensive timeline of Melissa's fraudulent sick days from the dental practice. 14 documented instances of calling in sick while meeting Gary at our house, supported by our home security footage and correlated with Gary's database access records. Dr. Morrison's office manager, Janet Walsh, had always been efficient and thorough in her administrative duties. When I called Monday morning to express concern about Melissa's recent health issues, she was immediately sympathetic. "Oh, Mr. Novak, I'm so glad you called. We've been worried about Melissa, too. She's used more sick time in the past 6 months than in her previous 3 years combined." "Really?" "She's been trying to hide how bad she feels, but I've been tracking it on my calendar because I was thinking about taking her to see a specialist." "That's so thoughtful of you. Would you mind sharing those dates with me? We could compare them with our records, make sure she's getting all the support she needs." I emailed Janet my carefully documented timeline within the hour, along with a note expressing concern about whether Melissa might be dealing with a chronic condition that required accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The irony was perfect. I was using employment law designed to protect workers to expose Melissa's fraud. Tuesday morning, Melissa left for work at her usual time, cheerful and energetic. She returned home at 10:30 a.m., her face pale and her hands visibly shaking. "I've been suspended," she announced, sitting heavily at our kitchen table. "Suspended? What happened?" "They said there were discrepancies in my sick leave records, that someone had reported concerns about whether I might be abusing the policy." She looked at me with growing suspicion. "Roger, you didn't what? Report that my wife was sick?" "Melissa, what's going on?" The deflection worked perfectly. She was too worried about her own situation to probe deeper into my involvement. "They're conducting a full review of my employment records." Janet said if they find evidence of fraud, I could be terminated and reported to the state dental board. "What kind of evidence would they find?" Melissa's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her face went completely white. That was Gary. His wife found out about the investigation. She's freezing their business accounts. The slip was small, but I caught it immediately. How would Melissa know about Gary's business problems unless they'd been in contact about more than just our home security system? Unless she'd been warned about what was coming. "Gary? The locksmith? Why would he text you about his business problems?" Melissa realized her mistake the moment the words left her mouth. He was checking to see if we needed any additional work done. You know, before the licensing issues get resolved. Another lie, but this one was desperate, clumsy. She was losing her ability to keep the story straight under pressure. "Melissa, is there something you need to tell me?" For a moment, I thought she might confess. Her eyes filled with tears and she reached across the table toward my hand. Then her phone buzzed again, and the moment passed. "I need to call Dr. Morrison, see if there's anything I can do to fix this misunderstanding." She left the room, and I heard her voice through the closed door, hushed, urgent, pleading. But she wasn't calling Dr. Morrison's office. "Gary, this is falling apart faster than we thought. I don't know what to do. He's asking questions." I recorded her side of the conversation through the door, adding another piece of evidence to my growing collection. Wednesday brought the complete collapse of Gary's business empire. Ellen Hoffman, Gary's wife of 16 years and co-owner of Precision Locks, had seen Tuesday night's follow-up news story and received a copy of my evidence packet from their insurance company. Ellen was nobody's fool. She'd built the administrative and financial side of their business while Gary handled the technical work. When she saw the pattern of after-hours database access coinciding with her husband's unexplained absences, she connected the dots immediately. Ellen had always suspected Gary of cheating, but she'd assumed it was casual encounters, not a systematic affair coordinated through criminal activity. By Wednesday morning, Ellen had filed for emergency divorce, frozen all business bank accounts as the 50% owner of Precision Locks, and hired Jennifer Walsh, the most aggressive forensic accountant in the county. Jennifer's preliminary review found $30,000 in unexplained expenses over 6 months. Dinners at expensive restaurants, hotel charges during times when Gary claimed to be working locally, jewelry purchases that had never appeared in Ellen's possession, and regular cash withdrawals that Gary couldn't account for. The pattern suggests systematic financial infidelity, Jennifer explained to Ellen during their Wednesday afternoon meeting. These aren't business expenses or random personal spending. Someone was funding an affair. By Wednesday evening, Ellen had also contacted every client in Gary's customer database, informing them that Precision Locks was ceasing operations and that they should seek immediate rekeying services from other providers. Gary returned to his workshop Wednesday night to find the locks changed and a legal notice posted on the door, informing him that the building lease was being terminated for breach of contract. Thursday morning brought Gary's complete professional ruin. Richards and Associates, the law firm representing Westfield Shopping Center, filed a lawsuit against both Gary personally and Precision Locks LLC. The shopping center claimed Gary had negligently handled confidential security information for their 50 retail tenants, potentially exposing them to criminal liability and requiring comprehensive security upgrades. The lawsuit sought $500,000 in damages to cover emergency rekey costs for all 50 stores, enhanced security system upgrades, lost business during security renovations, punitive damages for gross negligence. Gary's insurance company, Contractors Mutual, denied coverage within hours of receiving the lawsuit. The policy exclusion for intentional acts meant that deliberately misusing confidential information voided his professional liability protection. The insured's unauthorized access to client databases constitutes an intentional criminal act, wrote claims supervisor Patricia Lee. Coverage is specifically excluded for damages arising from criminal conduct. By Thursday afternoon, Gary had consulted with bankruptcy attorney Michael Rodriguez and was preparing to file for Chapter 7 protection. Your business assets are gone, your personal assets are at risk from the lawsuit, and you have no income stream, Rodriguez explained during their consultation. Bankruptcy is your only option to stop the bleeding. What about criminal charges? That's a separate issue. Bankruptcy protects you from civil claims, but it doesn't stop criminal prosecution. Friday brought my visit to the police station. Detective Maria Santos had 15 years of experience investigating white-collar crime, including several high-profile cases involving computer fraud and identity theft. She reviewed my evidence packet with the thoroughness I'd expected from someone who'd testified before grand juries and understood the importance of solid documentation. This is exceptional documentation, Mr. Novak. Computer fraud, theft of confidential information, potentially aggravated identity theft depending on what he did with the data. What kind of charges are we looking at? Federal charges are possible if he crossed state lines with the stolen data or used it for interstate commerce. But we'll probably start with state charges: felony computer fraud, unauthorized access to a protected computer system. When can you arrest him? We'll need to coordinate with the DA's office, probably issue a warrant next week. Have you suffered any direct financial damages? My company has spent over $40,000 on emergency rekey services and forensic IT analysis. 3 clients have filed preliminary claims for break-ins that occurred after Gary accessed their vacation schedules. Perfect. That gives us concrete damages to support the charges. The following Tuesday, Gary was arrested at his temporary apartment, the one-bedroom place he'd moved to after Ellen kicked him out of their house and changed the locks. The arrest was coordinated with local media, ensuring maximum coverage of his perp walk. Gary was released on $5,000 bail, paid with money borrowed from his elderly mother, but the damage to his reputation was irreversible. The local newspaper ran his booking photo alongside a detailed story about the expanding investigation, including quotes from affected homeowners and security experts discussing the broader implications of contractor access to personal information. 2 weeks later, Gary appeared before the state licensing board for his formal hearing. The hearing room in the state office building was smaller than I'd expected, just a conference table surrounded by 6 board members reviewing thick files of evidence. I attended as a witness and complainant, along with representatives from 3 other security companies who'd discovered similar patterns of unauthorized data access in their systems. Gary's attorney was Robert Bennett, a public defender who looked barely out of law school and seemed overwhelmed by the scope of the evidence against his client. My client's access to the secure home database was authorized, Bennett argued during his opening statement. Mr. Hoffman had legitimate business reasons for reviewing client information. Board Chairman William Torres wasn't buying it. Mr. Bennett, your client accessed confidential client information 47 times outside normal business hours. He downloaded vacation schedules and security layouts for families he had no business relationship with. He coordinated these accesses with personal activities unrelated to his professional duties. How exactly is that authorized? Gary sat silently while his attorney stumbled through an explanation about system compatibility checks and routine maintenance procedures. But his heart wasn't in the defense. He knew the evidence was overwhelming. Elena Rodriguez, our cybersecurity consultant, testified about the forensic analysis of our systems. The defendant's access pattern shows clear intent to misuse client data, she explained to the board. He specifically targeted families with extended vacation plans, downloaded their complete security profiles, and accessed this information on dates that correspond with his personal activities rather than any legitimate business purpose. Detective Santos testified about the ongoing criminal investigation, describing the correlation between Gary's data access and actual break-ins at client homes. 3 families reported security breaches during vacations that occurred within 2 weeks of the defendant's unauthorized access to their files, she explained. In each case, the security systems were bypassed using knowledge that only someone with access to the technical specifications could possess. The board's decision was unanimous. License suspended for 2 years, $25,000 fine, mandatory ethics training, and immediate notification to all affected clients about the scope of unauthorized access. Board Chairman Torres delivered the verdict with obvious disgust. Mr. Hoffman, you have violated the fundamental trust that underlies the locksmith profession. Clients entrust contractors with access to their most personal spaces and their most confidential information. Your systematic abuse of that trust represents a betrayal not just of individual clients, but of the entire profession. Gary's locksmith career was over. While Gary faced professional consequences, I was dealing with the personal aftermath of Melissa's situation. Her termination from Dr. Morrison's dental practice became official 3 weeks after her initial suspension. The practice's investigation, conducted by employment attorney Sandra Mills, had found 14 documented cases of sick leave fraud, each one supported by time-stamped evidence of her actual activities. The pattern of deception is systematic and deliberate, Mills concluded in her report to Dr. Morrison. Ms. Novak claimed emergency dental situations requiring her absence, while simultaneously engaging in personal activities unrelated to any medical condition. The state dental board suspended Melissa's hygienist license for 1 year and required her to complete 40 hours of professional ethics training before being eligible for reinstatement. With both Gary and Melissa now aware that I had documented evidence of their affair, our marriage became a careful dance of unspoken accusations and forced normalcy for the children's sake. But I wasn't ready to confront the personal situation directly. Not yet. Instead, I consulted with Patricia Wells, the family law attorney David Roth had recommended. Patricia specialized in high-asset divorces involving professional misconduct and had a reputation for thorough preparation and strategic thinking. You have everything you need for a fault-based divorce, Patricia told me after reviewing the evidence files. Adultery supported by video evidence, documentation of systematic deception, proof of financial impact to the family through her employment fraud. What about custody? With her employment termination for cause in the fraud charges, plus the evidence of systematic deception over 6 months, you'll likely receive primary custody. She'll get visitation rights, but the court will favor stability for the children. And property division? The house was your premarital asset, correct? And the business is solely in your name? Yes. I owned the house before we married, and Secure Home was established with my capital and credit. Then you're in excellent shape financially. She'll be entitled to some spousal support initially, but given the circumstances and her employment termination, it won't be substantial or long-term. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the divorce filing, gathering financial records, documenting the children's school and activity schedules, and coordinating with Patricia to ensure we had every possible advantage. Meanwhile, Gary's criminal case was moving forward. The district attorney's office, led by prosecutor Amanda Foster, had decided to charge Gary with multiple felonies: computer fraud, theft of confidential information, and conspiracy to commit burglary. The conspiracy charges were based on evidence that Gary had provided information to associates who had carried out the actual break-ins at client homes. The defendant's systematic access to client vacation schedules, combined with the correlation between his data theft and actual burglaries, supports charges of criminal conspiracy, Foster explained during a press conference announcing the indictments. Gary's bail was revoked after prosecutors argued he posed a flight risk, and he was remanded to county jail pending trial. I filed for divorce on a Monday morning in early December, choosing the timing carefully to maximize the impact on Melissa's already deteriorating situation. Melissa received the papers at her new job, medical receptionist at an urgent care clinic, making $32,000 annually instead of the $65,000 she'd earned as a dental hygienist. She called me within minutes of being served. "Roger, please. Can we talk about this? Can we try counseling? Think about the children." "What's there to talk about, Melissa?" "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But we can work through this. Couples do it all the time. 14 mistakes, actually. I have them all documented, time-stamped, and correlated with Gary's criminal activity." The silence stretched between us for nearly a minute. "You recorded everything." "I documented evidence of systematic fraud and adultery that exposed our family and my business to criminal liability. The court will be very interested in the complete timeline." "What about Emma and Josh?" "The children will be fine. They'll live with me primarily, visit you on alternating weekends and Wednesday evenings. Stability, Melissa. Something they haven't had while you were coordinating your affair through stolen client data." "Roger, please." "The children need consistency. They need a parent who doesn't lie about being sick to cover up criminal activity. They need to know that actions have consequences." She hung up, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The divorce proceedings moved quickly given the overwhelming evidence and Melissa's limited financial resources to fight the action. Her attorney, legal aid lawyer Jennifer Park, tried to argue for reconciliation and shared custody, but the documentation was too comprehensive to overcome. Emma and Josh took the news better than I'd expected. Children are remarkably resilient, and they'd sensed the tension in our house for months without understanding its source. "Is Mom going to be okay?" Emma asked the night I explained the situation. "Your mother is going to figure out how to rebuild her life. She just needs time to understand that choices have consequences." "And you're okay, Dad?" I looked at my 15-year-old daughter, smart, perceptive, already showing signs of the careful judgment that would serve her well in college and beyond. "I'm okay, sweetheart." "We're all going to be okay. Sometimes adults make mistakes that change everything, but that doesn't mean we can't build something better." "Are we going to stay in the house?" "Absolutely. This is your home, and nothing about that changes." Josh, my 13-year-old son, was more direct in his questions. "Did Mom cheat on you?" "Yes, Josh, she did." "With the locksmith guy who installed our security system?" "Yes." "That's really stupid. He had access to everything, out of the mouths of babes." 3 months later, Gary pled guilty to multiple felony charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. The plea agreement included guilty plea to computer fraud, Class C felony. Guilty plea to theft of confidential information, Class C felony. Guilty plea to conspiracy to commit burglary, Class B felony. 18 months in state prison. $50,000 in restitution to affected clients. Permanent prohibition from any profession requiring bonding or handling confidential information. Judge Margaret Foster, no relation to the prosecutor, delivered a scathing assessment during sentencing. "Mr. Hoffman, you exploited the trust of families who invited you into their homes to protect them. You used their confidential information to facilitate crimes against them. Your actions represent a fundamental betrayal of professional ethics and basic human decency." Gary was led away in handcuffs, beginning an 18-month sentence that would likely end his ability to find meaningful employment in any trust-based profession. His probation terms included no computer access except for pre-approved employment, no contact with any former clients, mandatory counseling for impulse control, community service focused on victim restitution, regular reporting to probation officers with access to employment and financial records. The restitution order meant Gary would be making payments to affected clients for years, assuming he could find employment that generated sufficient income. Ellen Hoffman had moved to Phoenix with their two teenage daughters, using the proceeds from selling their house and business assets. She'd started fresh with a management position at a large security company, leveraging her administrative experience while leaving the locksmith profession behind. Sometimes justice comes in the form of successful reinvention. Melissa's situation continued to deteriorate over the following months. Her hygienist license was reinstated after completing the mandatory ethics training, but her reputation in our community was destroyed. She eventually found work at a dental clinic 40 miles away, making the daily drive to a position that paid $20,000 less than her previous job. The professional consequences extended beyond employment. The state dental board's disciplinary action was public record, discoverable by any future employer conducting background checks. Melissa's career prospects were permanently limited by her documented history of professional misconduct. She'd moved to a studio apartment near the clinic where she worked, downsizing from our 4-bedroom house to a 500-square-foot space with a Murphy bed and a kitchenette. The children adapted to the new custody arrangement without significant problems. Emma was thriving in her accelerated academic program, already taking college-level courses and planning to study cybersecurity at MIT. Josh had won the regional science fair with his project on home security vulnerabilities and was designing increasingly sophisticated protection systems for his friends' treehouses. Meanwhile, secure home systems experienced unprecedented growth. The security breach, ironically, became our most effective marketing campaign. Clients and prospects appreciated our proactive response, our willingness to absorb substantial costs to protect their interests, and our commitment to comprehensive security upgrades. We gained over 400 new accounts in the 6 months following Gary's arrest, establishing Secure Home as the dominant residential security provider in our market area. I used the business growth and the settlement from our lawsuit against Gary's insurance company to acquire Thompson Security Services, our largest remaining competitor. The acquisition doubled our market share and gave us the resources to expand into commercial security consulting. The Westfield Shopping Center contract, initially delayed by the security breach investigation, became the foundation for our commercial division's growth. Our transparent handling of the Gary situation convinced the shopping center management that Secure Home was the kind of company that could be trusted with sensitive security responsibilities. By the end of the year, Secure Home had grown from a 15-employee operation to a 40-person company with residential and commercial divisions, gross revenues exceeding $2 million annually, and a reputation for ethical practices that attracted clients from across the region. I also started dating, something I hadn't expected to be ready for so quickly. Sarah Bennett was Emma's AP English teacher at Roosevelt High School. Intelligent, funny, divorced with no children of her own, but a natural warmth with teenagers. We met during a parent-teacher conference, started talking about Emma's college preparatory work, and discovered we both loved hiking and cooking. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Sarah asked during our first official dinner date at Antonelli's, the Italian restaurant where Melissa and I had celebrated our 10th anniversary 2 years earlier. "I'm sure." "Are you?" She smiled across the candlelit table. "I've been ready for a while, just waiting for the right person." "What makes you think I might be the right person?" "You handled an impossible situation with integrity. You protected your children, your clients, and your business while making sure justice was done. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." 6 months later, Sarah and I were engaged, planning a small ceremony for the following spring after Emma graduated and started college. The children loved Sarah. She brought stability, warmth, and intellectual stimulation to our household without trying to replace their mother or compete with Melissa's role in their lives. 18 months after Gary's arrest, I attended Josh's middle school science fair where he presented an award-winning project on advanced home security systems. The display included working models of electronic locks, motion sensor arrays, and encrypted communication devices he'd built himself. Sarah stood beside me, beaming with pride at Josh's technical achievements, while Emma explained network security principles to younger students who were fascinated by her demonstrations. Near the end of the evening, Melissa arrived separately, 20 minutes late and looking harried from her long commute. She approached me near Josh's display table, where a small crowd had gathered to hear his presentation. "Roger, could we talk privately about summer custody arrangements for Josh's camp schedule?" I looked at my son, confidently explaining his project to a group of parents and teachers, then at Emma, helping younger students understand the basic principles of electronic security systems. Email my attorney, Melissa. Patricia handles all scheduling coordination. Please, just 5 minutes. There are some complications with my work schedule. No, Melissa. We communicate through attorneys. That system works fine for everyone. Sarah touched my arm gently, understanding the dynamics without needing explanation. Come on, I said to her. Let's check out the chemistry projects before the awards ceremony starts. We walked away together, leaving Melissa standing alone beside Josh's display about security vulnerabilities that most people never consider until it's too late to prevent them. The story had come full circle in the most satisfying way possible. Gary Hoffman, the locksmith who'd betrayed professional trust, was serving 18 months in state prison and would spend years making restitution payments to his victims. His career was over, his marriage was destroyed, and his reputation was permanently ruined. Melissa had learned that systematic deception carries a price that compounds over time. Her career was limited, her financial situation was precarious, and her relationship with our children was constrained by the consequences of her choices. But Emma and Josh were thriving in an environment of honesty and stability. They'd learned important lessons about integrity, consequences, and the importance of choosing trustworthy people. Secure home systems had emerged stronger, more profitable, and more respected than ever before. Our response to the security breach had become a case study in crisis management and ethical business practices, and I discovered that sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or elaborate schemes. It's simply building a better life while ensuring that justice follows its proper course. The final validation came 2 years later when Secure Home Systems was featured in Security Today magazine as the fastest-growing residential security company in the region. The article highlighted our innovative response to data security challenges and our client-first approach to crisis management. They never mentioned Gary by name, but industry professionals knew the story. Emma was accepted early admission to MIT's cybersecurity program with a full scholarship. Josh was designing security systems for half the neighborhood, earning money for college while learning advanced electronics and programming. Sarah and I had been married for 8 months, building a partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. And Melissa? Last I heard, she was still making the daily 80-mile round trip to her job at the clinic, still living in her studio apartment, still dealing with the long-term consequences of choices made during what she'd thought were stolen moments with a charming locksmith. Gary had been released from prison after serving 14 months, but his probation terms and criminal record made employment nearly impossible. The last report I'd received suggested he was working day labor construction jobs, struggling to make his monthly restitution payments while living in a halfway house. The locksmith had been right about one thing during Josh's original science project. Most people don't understand how easy it is to break into their houses. But they understand even less how difficult it is to repair the damage once the break-in is discovered and documented. Some doors, once opened, can never be fully secured again. Some locks, once broken, were never meant to be fixed. And some betrayals create consequences that compound over time, affecting not just the betrayer, but everyone in their orbit. Justice isn't always swift, but when it's thorough and properly documented, it tends to be permanent. The security system I'd built around my family, my business, and my future was now stronger than ever, protected by experience, reinforced by careful planning, and monitored by people who understood the true value of trust. Gary Hoffman had taught me an important lesson about security. The biggest threats often come from the people you invite inside. I'd made sure that particular vulnerability would never be exploited again.